All my needs are even met. Before I can even wonder, food falls from nowhere. It materializes. This is wonderful. All that is at my beck and call. We encourage you to have the perspective of the fish and not the outside gawker, looking in from outside the bowl. Yes, we are complete.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. Can you speak to us about truth and constructs and the connection between them?
We realize that this is where Israel chose to begin, but we would like to check and see if this is the beginning point. Empty mind, full heart. We would like to talk about the sun, your sun, your star, a warm and glowing energy that it provides, the light it provides onto your planet, onto your plants, onto your very bodies, the nourishment it provides, this warm glow that you have come to depend on. That you have, rely on is not the right word, because it is such a given that the sun will rise and set, that you do not question this. It is a given, as much as your breath in and out. Oh, yes. And yet this is a matter of perspective. You might even say an illusion. Your scientists now know that your sun does not rise and set. This is not so. It is not the sun that is moving, but actually your planet is spinning on its axis and then spinning in an orbit around the sun. Yet from your perspective, the sun rises and falls. We would like to say that don't you enjoy these beautiful sunsets and sunrises? This is a question for you.
I do.
Yes. And then we would say, does it matter if the sun is moving or your planet is revolving? What is truly important is that you are moved, that you have allowed yourself to enjoy the experience. And so we have chosen this roundabout way, pardon our pun, as we are talking about revolutions around planetary bodies. We have found a roundabout way to say this to you. Choose the better feeling perspective, because it is only the experience that matters. If it feels better to you to think of the sun rising and falling, or is no consequence to you either way, then continue to call this a sunrise and sunset. And indeed, though it was many hundreds of years ago that your scientists discovered that it is not the sun that is moving, but your own planet, many of you, the majority of you, continue to refer to this action as a sunrise and a sunset. Isn't this interesting?
It's so interesting. So it's not our perspectives that matter. It's what matters is that we feel good. What matters is how we feel. So then how can we let go of these perspectives and stories that we've been telling ourselves our entire life? Somehow we like to hold on to them. How can we let them go so that we can feel good, so that we can open up to a new perspective, a more expansive truth?
Well, what you say has much value. We're hesitant to use the word truth now in light of our conversation, that truth is so subjective. And truly, you can find truth in most anything. You are the chooser of the truth and the chooser of the untruth. So it is in your news cycles, isn't it? same news story, same facts, yet the truth can be so different depending on the chooser, the viewer, the pointer. And so we would like to start by saying, once again, that from our perspective, we delight in your ability to choose. And so we would not require that you choose the better feeling story or better feeling belief or better feeling construct. Instead, we simply delight that you choose. We do think it is of value to wake up in your own choosing so that you are choosing consciously, so that if you do, for a momentary period of time, choose the meaning or construct or story that is less than ideal, you remember you also have the power to choose a different story or perspective. But we do not require this. Again, from our perspective, this incarnation, your purpose, you might say, although this is a loaded word for human beings, your purpose is not, let us rewind. Some would say that your purpose is joy. Some would say your purpose in this incarnation is service, others expansion. We say all of these can be true. Remember, it is the chooser, the viewer, the selector that decides what is true and not true. This is perspective, isn't it? Perspective. And so it matters not. However, from our point of view, we would say that your purpose in this incarnation, in any incarnation in the 3D, is to choose. You get to choose joy or sadness. You get to choose service or no service, disservice. You get to choose, I know this is a tricky one. Expansion happens whether you choose it or not. However, you can consciously choose your expansion, which feels very different than simply allowing the expansion that will happen no matter what. What we mean by this is, in the same way that the universe expands, you are made of the same materials, the same atoms, the same ions, the same this and that as your stars and planets. You are all the same in that way. And so if the universe is expanding, and your scientists have also found this to be true for the time being. There is more to say on that topic, but your scientists are not there just yet. Again, it is a construct. It is the construct they are working with, but there is more happening than simply expansion from our point of view. We will save this conversation for another time. However, if your universe is from the limited perspective that you have chosen, expanding always, then it is also true if you're made up of the same materials as the universe, you are subject to the same laws, and so you are also expanding. But again, unconscious expansion and conscious expansion, deliberate, focused, intended expansion, are different. Do you see the difference?
I see the difference, and where this is taking me is, what if we have a desire to consciously expand? We have a set awareness. We know that we get to choose.
Yes.
Yet we contain subconscious programming from our past,
yes,
we absorbed, integrated from our parents at a
yes,
cell level, whatever. How do we, I'm not sure of the correct word, how do we expand, evolve from the subconscious to the conscious? How do we stop repeating those subconscious patterns, stories, pains, struggles that we like to hold on to? How do we let them go and choose new ones when the process seems to be beyond our awareness? It seems to be subconscious. It seems to be automatic. Oh, I've done that thing again.
Yes.
Does this make sense?
Yes. First, we would like to commend you. We are delighted because you have begun to refine your questions. We like this. You are getting trickier with your questions. This is wonderful. And from this tricky, when we say tricky, we mean playful point of view, we would like you to know that that is our perspective as well. What you describe as repetition sounds to us like a feeling of powerlessness, unconscious. All these words matter not what words you use, it's the vibration underneath that we are listening to. This feels like helplessness, powerlessness. And from our perspective, we are amused because nothing could be further from the point. Now, we think these are wonderful questions, so we are not amused, chuckling at the question itself. We think it's a wonderful question. We are simply amused in the same way that you might be amused at, your children who throw their fits and tantrums that you know will only be temporary and will pass soon enough, and you know all is well. You can hold that spot and that space for them, for your children. We have the same sort of feeling when we watch humans, whether adults or children, fixate on something that unwinds itself. And so let us go back to begin to unweave some of the beliefs that are interwoven into your conversation. You have dropped some clues for yourself, some vibrational clues. Let us start there. One construct, one way to look at emotions, if you choose to, is as guidance. What we mean by this is your expanded self, most of your expanded self, it exists with us in non-physical. In fact, it is your expanded self that is primarily speaking at this moment. You have access to your expanded self at any moment in time, as well as all of our expanded selves. Only a small, very small, minuscule, ionic portion has expressed itself through this 3D lens in the form of your physical incarnation. The rest of you remains as a guide, as a connection, as a resource in non-physical. Let us pause here and remind you that within this conversation about constructs and beliefs, this is but one construct or way to view this principle. Listen to it, explore it with us, and if it works for you, wonderful, and if not, you may set it aside. You are the chooser of your beliefs and constructs, and we have already said that you choose what feels better in this moment for you, and perhaps 1 week from now, you may choose something different. You may set your constructs and your beliefs aside that easily. For some reason, in this human world, many groups believe you must marry these constructs, these dogmas, for the rest of your life. No changes allowed. This is in itself a choice. And so we come back to the idea of emotions as guidance. And so one construct, one way of seeing emotions as guidance is your expanded self, your non-physical self, has a better vantage point, one that is not wrapped up in the chosen limits and illusions of limits of the 3D world. You have a non-physical perspective. And so from our non-physical perspective, there is only powerfulness, there is only love, there is only joy, there is only expansion. This is where we are. We do not deviate from these energetic vibrations. However, in your 3D world, you get to choose limits and the pinching off of things like love and power, this feeling of power. Now, when we use the word power, we do not mean it from a 3D sense. Power for us is simply choice. And so you choose to forget that you are the chooser always, always. This for us is what power truly is from a non-physical perspective. And so whenever you encounter a circumstance, you meaning the 3D version of you, the physically expressed version of you, and you think a thought about that situation that is not in alignment with the way your more zoomed out non-physical self would see that same situation, you will experience, as a result of that disjoined thought, you will experience an unpleasant or more unpleasant emotion. However, when you think a thought that is in alignment with the way your expanded, zoomed out self sees that same situation, you will experience a more pleasant emotion. And so we will say, given that construct we have just offered, if we go back to your conversation that and your questions that felt to us like powerlessness, like stuckness, like, unconscious, nothing I can do about this. This does not feel pleasant for us. Does that feel pleasant for you?
No, it doesn't.
Yes. And so if you utilize the construct that we have offered, you get to choose whether you would like to operate through this construct for now or not, then you will know there's something about your beliefs that is not in alignment with the way your more expanded self would see this topic, or even the way that your more expanded self would ask this question. Does this make sense?
This makes sense. And can you offer, because I don't have the awareness of it right now, can you offer a perspective from my or our expanded self that they would see? Because I'm looking through that lens of that powerlessness, obviously. So I don't see anything other than that right now.
Yes, we certainly can. And we also would like to say that we love limits. We love the choosing of perspectives, of illusions. This is why you have decided to experience this incarnation. We simply like it when you wake up within this dream, this illusion of 3D reality every now and then, so that you can recalibrate and make different choices should you choose to. And so let's see if we can unravel some of the not good feeling beliefs. And by not good feeling, you could also say beliefs that are not in alignment with the way your more expanded self would see the same situation. Remember, emotions are your guidance. And there is no right or wrong emotion, simply more pleasant or less pleasant. And we love them all because they are all guidance, again, for the reasons that we have outlined. And so let us start. You mentioned this idea of repetition. We would say there is no such thing. What we mean by this, did you enjoy our dramatic pause? What we mean by this is that there is no past, there is no future, there is only the choosing of the same thing in the now. This feels like repetition for you, but it is not. You are always in the now, and so you are not repeating. Remember, this is an impossibility if you are expanding. You are simply making a similar choice, but the reason we can say it is not repeating in terms of sameness is that you are making it from a more expanded point of view always. So if these were revolutions, around and around and around, they would be revolutions from a slightly different perspective because you have expanded. Even if you make what on the outside looks like a similar choice, even if you make what seems like an unconscious choice, shifts have taken place. We will call these micro shifts, but we think that this implies a judgment of better or worse, as in a micro shift is somehow inferior to what might be called a macro shift. We would say all shifts are either micro or macro. It's just that you have a micro shift, and that is the micro shift that opens up something new for you. So you call it a macro shift, just because it happened to be the shift on which something new opened. However, how does that make that last micro shift any better or worse than all the micro shifts that it stood upon? Does this make sense?
Yes, that does make sense. And that softens the choosing and to do with the repetition. But what came to mind was repetition. We keep choosing the same.
May we ask you to hold your space for just a moment? Would you mind?
Sure.
We know that you can. We know that you can hold this thought. We simply wanted to say that these micro shifts that you are making, these things that you call repetitions, we understand the desire for conscious choosing. We understand this. And we applaud this conscious choosing as opposed to an expansion of which you are not aware. It's fun to be aware of our progress. However, we wish to say, when your focus, if you first believe that your power comes from this moment, and the past and the future are both illusions, because there is only this moment. And so when you take your focus off of what we would call the reality, the firmness, the thought that there is only now to operate from, and you think about thought about, oh, woe is me, I messed that up, that's the past, or how will I ever be able to do X, Y, and Z, that's the future. You take your thoughts away from your own power, meaning the now, your sure-footedness. When you begin to consciously create, consciously expand, when that desire bubbles up within you, it is very enticing to take your focus off the now, meaning in this moment all is well. Can you feel how there is a lack of acceptance for where you are when you begin to say, of course you wouldn't use these words, faster, faster, dig deeper, 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 what am I missing, what's going on? This is skirting the moment. This is a lack of acceptance for all is well and for where you are. And there's nothing wrong with any of this. We are simply saying sometimes in your effort to consciously expand versus and feeling as if you have to dig out or go looking for something from the past or be somewhere that you are not, defeats your goal. And so the question becomes, how can you consciously expand but remain in the powerfulness of this moment? The reason that we call it powerful is because you can only choose from the present. You can only choose from this moment. We have already said that power for us is choice. And so the question becomes, how might you, from the power of this present moment, without going digging or without worrying about the future or digging into the past, how might you expand more consciously? And we say that the answer is the same as always. One mantra might be empty mind, full heart. The answers to everything that you want are at your beck and call. In fact, the answer is available to you before you are aware of the question. The question appears long after the answer is already there. The question is just a method that we help guide you in so that you might focus your awareness. And here is the point of this conversation: consciousness versus unconsciousness. We help you use the question so that you might better focus consciously, so that you might be able to, with this honed and sculpted question, notice the answer, which is already there. Already there. The answers are already there. You need not go digging for them. The answers are already there. And so it is through the guidance of the focusing of this refined question that you can become a more conscious participant. But remember, everything you need is already in place in this present moment, and not locked in the past or locked in the deep recesses of the mind. If something hinders, then it is but a focused question away. The answer is always present prior to the question. We apologize for our long-windedness. Does this make sense? And does this add to the question that you have held on to for us?
Yes, it does. It relates in, and I, as you were speaking, could feel I was brought to that place of presence and pure presence and knowingness, connectedness. All I need is here right now in this moment. So this place is different, very different from the place I was in when I asked the question. So I think where a lot of us get caught up is when we go into the mind and access memories. We access memories and then we choose looking through the lens of the memories. So the answer then would be just return to this place of presence and knowingness, because from this place, I sense there are no memories. Is that correct?
Let us consider the best entry point for this topic. There is much that is good feeling. And we did not say true or correct, because in light of this string of conversation, this thread of conversation, we have already determined you are the chooser of what is true and correct. And so if something feels better to you, more pleasant, then it is more in alignment with the way your more expanded self would see this. And so given this, we would reflect this barometer back to you. Does this construct, this belief that you have just uttered to us, feel more pleasant to you?
Absolutely, it does. So it's something that I would like to access more often.
Say more.
It's just a beautiful presence, expansive, delicious place to be. And perhaps this is alignment. Perhaps this is the difference between creating from a place of alignment versus not in alignment.
Yes. Yes. Everything is a wonderful co-creation. We know that you know this, and we know that many like you know this. However, many times, many humans can think that co-creation requires multiple incarnations, multiple people. When we say co-creation, primarily and usually we mean a co-creation between you and you. A co-creation between your expanded self and your physically expressed self. You are always co-creating. You are always in step with one another. And you may think of, as an analogy, a parent and a child, or even two really good friends who enjoy one another. As much as you have in common, if you were to go on an adventure or a road trip, you do need to check in with one another, don't you? Along the journey?
Yes.
Yes. And so it is with your expanded self. By using your emotions as guidance, utilizing this construct, as we have said, you may keep in step with one another. Now, sometimes it may be delicious and wonderful and just what we will say the doctor ordered when you go down a memory lane. This is nostalgia. But we will say, vibrationally speaking, even though you are in a dreamscape or a mindscape, as you remember things, we speak to you only on a vibrational level. And so your emotions, and this is what we mean by there is only now, your emotions can only happen in the now. Vibration can only happen in the now and be experienced by you in the now. Regardless of where your mind wanders to and this and that, what you bring into the now always, what you carry with you, vibrationally speaking, and from our perspective, this is our only language, our primary language, vibration, emotion. That is only in the now. Does this clarify things?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot here, and I feel it landing. I don't have any more questions here. This was very enlightening. Thank you.
Just let us check to see if there are any further messages for you. Ah, yes. There is an image that comes to mind, and that is a fish swimming in a bowl. From the outside perspective, one might think, what a tiny little world. How might that fish be content? Poor fish, trapped in the bowl. And from the fish's point of view, the fish might think, I have everything I need. How fortunate, how wonderful. Ooh, look at that big, wonderful world. Ooh, if I swim from this perspective or this perspective through my glass bowl, I can see everything in all directions from this one spot. I needn't go anywhere. I have access to all. All my needs are even met. Before I can even wonder, food falls from nowhere. It materializes. This is wonderful. All that is at my beck and call. We encourage you to have the perspective of the fish and not the outside gawker looking in from outside the bowl. Yes, we are complete.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.